Welcome, and thank you for tuning in. You're listening to the Beyond 50 radio program. I'm Daniel Davis. As we approach midlife, many of us want to fire our bosses and start that super business and look for the life that we feel is going to achieve with our dreams intact. Joining us here on the Beyond 50 radio program today is someone who is known to do that very thing. That is to take your business or whatever your dreams are to a whole different level that you could have never imagined. He is simply known as the Capitalist Evangelist. Former Libertarian Vice President nominee, he is also a fierce, enthusiastic, and relentless defender of Reagan conservatism, libertarianism, and economic freedom and capitalism. I'd like to welcome to the Beyond 50 radio program today someone who's going to share the power of Relentless, our guest, Wayne Allyn Root. Wayne, thank you for joining us here on the program today.
Hey, Daniel, how are you?
Well, pretty good. It sounds like you're a pretty big dynamo, especially when you don't prefer to call yourself as a chairman, CEO, or president, but something else. Tell us about that.
Well, I like to refer myself as, CEO is certainly in the title, but CEO, CE for Capitalist Evangelist, HEB for Human Energizer Bunny, and CR for Chief Rainmaker. Those are kind of my handles, but there's a CEO in there too. I am a CEO, so that's okay. But it's a little boring for me. I like to spiff things up a little bit. I don't want to be just another CEO.
Mm-hmm. No doubt about that. Now, tell us about this Power of Relentless, what you help get people to understand as far as your principles are to really go to that next level.
Well, look, it's a 250-page book that's chock full of advice and a 7-step program to help you be more successful and a 12-step program to help you give you the foundation of energy and confidence I think you need to be successful. So all of that is inside the book. But in the end, if you're going to boil things down to one thing that changes people's lives, I remember there was that movie with Billy Crystal many, many years ago, and he was searching for what he wanted out of life. I can't remember the name of the movie, but the other guy kept holding up his hand saying, one. You got to find the one thing that you're good at in life that you love to do, and success will automatically come. And I think it does, even though there's 100 factors, it does boil down to one thing. I think that one thing is being relentless. I've spent my life observing super wealthy people. I've been very lucky because I'm not super wealthy myself. I'm a very successful small businessman. But because I'm in the media, I've interviewed some of the wealthiest and most successful people in America. Because I'm a writer, I've met many of the most successful people. Because I'm a schmoozer, I'm always out at events and parties. And because I'm in politics, and I actually made it onto a presidential ticket, I've met some of the most wealthy donors in America. And so when you meet people like that, and you're really an observant person, which I am, I would say the one quality I found is not that they're any smarter than most people. There's nothing else about them that's special. It's simply that they are relentless. You show me someone that's worth $100 million or more, and especially $1 billion or more, a la Donald Trump, I'll show you someone who never takes no for an answer. And I don't care if the topic is making money. I don't care if the topic is putting a deal together, or the topic is even picking up beautiful women. Ask Donald Trump. I guarantee you he's never accepted no in his entire life. I don't think any person, woman or otherwise, for any proposition, has ever said no to Donald Trump, and his answer is, okay, and he walks away. No, he keeps working on you and working on you and working on you until finally you just give up or give in because you're so worn out. Well, that's kind of been my entire life's philosophy. I just don't stop until I hear the word yes. I'm going to bother you and hound you and harass you until I get what I want. And that's what makes a person successful. And so, being relentless is what it's all about. So I wrote the book about it called The Power of Relentless. I used my mother's story, I think, as the greatest example of relentless. I opened the whole book with it. My mom and dad were both dying of cancer at the same time in 1992. And I was 29 years old at the time, and my mom and dad died 28 days apart of cancer. Really rough time in my life. But thank God I was, 29 going on 30 as opposed to being like a 5-year-old kid. I don't know how you'd ever recover from that. But, even at that age, it was devastating. And so my dad died, and I'm flying back and forth to funerals and hospitals, and both of them were in a hospital room in the same hospital, one floor above each other, for a couple of months on and off. And so I'm living 3,000 miles away, flying back and forth. My dad dies first, and then 28 days later, I'm back home, and the phone rings. It's the doctor who treated them both, the oncologist, and he says, Wayne, please sit down. I've got some bad news for you. I said, what? He said, your mom is gone. I said, what do you mean she's gone? I just spoke to her yesterday. He said, well, she, basically fell into a coma this morning. We rushed to the hospital. There's no sign of brain activity of any kind. We've declared her brain dead, and we've disconnected life support, and so she's gone. And he said, don't rush home. You've had so much tragedy in your life. We don't want you to rush home and have another tragedy. Get your affairs in order. Take your time. Your sister will make funeral arrangements back here. And, come back home in a few days. Relax. So he hands the phone over to my sister, and he walks out of the room. You hear his footsteps going out. And then he closes the door so she's alone with me, has some privacy. And she says, okay, I waited till he left the room. I wanted to tell you something I did not want him to hear. And I was like, what? And she says, well, Mom isn't dead. You heard him say they disconnected life support. But her brain may be dead, but her heart hasn't stopped beating. And you and I both know she's not going to die until you get here. So you better get on the first plane, get the red eye, and get your butt over here now. And so I got on the plane. I flew 3,000 miles, and by the time I landed, it was 12 hours after that phone call. By the time I got to the airport and got on a plane, the first available plane that had seats, and once I landed, it was an hour from the airport, my parents' hospital. So it took 12 hours from that phone call where that doctor said she was dead. And she was still alive when I walked in her hospital room. Now, she was hooked up to 1,000 different wires. Her eyes weren't open. She was brain dead. According to doctors and medical science, for all intents and purposes, she was dead. But my sister had held her hand the whole night and said, don't die. Wayne's on the way. You can't die till your son gets here. You know that Wayne's going to make it here, and you cannot die. Well, she inspired her, and she stayed alive the whole night. And her heart kept beating, would not stop. When I got there and told her I loved her and hugged her and cried with her, and my sister and I were both holding hands and hugging her, and I told her, it's time to go. You have fought so hard. She had cancer for 6 years. It's time to go. Rest. Get up there in heaven with Dad. And the heart stopped right there. I mean, right there. So it went beating the entire night, knowing I was on the way, and then she knew I'd gotten there and given her permission to finally give in and give up. And she died on the spot. And doctors would say that's impossible. The doctor couldn't understand how the heart had kept beating despite the fact that they disconnected life support. But the reality is, evidently, you're not dead. Evidently, where there's a will, there's a way. Evidently, if you have heart, it doesn't even matter if your brain is dead. And that's what I think that story proves above anything else, Daniel, is that if your heart is big enough, you can accomplish anything in life. And I learned from my mom that day. And only since that day have I had all my success in life. And lots of people are successful at one thing in the world. One. That doesn't really prove anything. What if you got lucky once? What if all you know is real estate? What if all you know is stocks? But I can prove my story. You'll see it all laid out in my book. I can prove that I've been successful at a whole variety of diverse things that have nothing to do with one another, except that my mom taught me that day to never quit and to keep fighting until the moment you get what you want. Just absolutely attack, 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 attack. The Japanese at Pearl Harbor, Tora, Tora, Tora. All day long, 24 hours a day, I attack. I'm always on offense. I am combative. I am aggressive. I am in your face. I'm like Donald Trump. And I'm born and raised in New York, so I guess there's something about drinking that New York water that makes Donald and I very much alike in business and politics. But the end result is that I've been successful in many different fields. I became the #1 anchorman at CNBC. Even though I'd never been on TV one day in my life, unheard of. It just has never happened. I wound up sending my daughter to Harvard after homeschooling her, unheard of. I don't know if it's ever happened before. Has any homeschool kid ever been accepted at Harvard, Stanford, Columbia, Penn, Brown, Duke, Chicago, all the best schools in America, 12 for 12, then graduated magna cum laude from Harvard University and now getting a free ride for her master's degree in economics at the University of Hamburg in Germany. Unheard of story. I've never been in politics a day in my life, and I wound up at the Libertarian vice presidential nomination. Unheard of. Wound up becoming the #1 Vegas oddsmaker in the world and got a star on the Vegas Walk of Stars. Next time you're on vacation in Vegas, go to Palace Hotel and step right in front of Paris, and there's my star in the sidewalk, 180-pound granite star, Wayne Allyn Root. It says the King of Vegas. For all the years that I've promoted Las Vegas, they gave me a star. So, I've done things in so many different fields, never took an English course in my life, never took a writing course in my life, and I've written 10 books, including 4 national bestsellers, and one of them hit #1 in the country. I know nothing about television, other than the fact that I was an anchorman, but I know nothing about TV business, and I've sold 3 TV series to Hollywood. As a matter of fact, my most recent one comes out May 12th, so write this down if you're listening, May 12th. 9 o'clock at night, Eastern and Pacific, on Investigation Discovery Channel, ID channel, Investigation Discovery. That's the CSI channel. It has all the programs that are like CSI. And my new show, Las Vegas Law, comes out on May 12th. You can watch the debut episode, executive produced and created by me. So, I mean, I've achieved success that people only dream of in one of those fields, and I've achieved success in all of them. Now I've got my own radio show. I was wanted a radio show 5 days a week. Got the #1 political radio show in Las Vegas, following Michael Savage and Mark Levin as the Wayne Allen Root Show, War Now. So, I mean, nobody has ever heard of you're successful in radio and TV and writing best-selling books, and you've produced TV shows, and you were an anchor man, and you became a vice presidential nominee, and your daughter was homeschooled to Harvard. I mean, the list is very long, and all of it comes down to Relentless. In every one of those cases, I was rejected 1,000 times, and people laughed at me, and people said, you can't do what you want to do. It's not possible. And every time I knocked the glass ceiling down, or I knocked the door down, or I went under or over the obstacle, and I made it happen. And that's about being relentless. That's why I wrote the book, The Power of Relentless. Nothing is impossible. Nothing.
One person who comes to mind for me, and I wonder if you've had the opportunity to meet and interview him, is, I'm trying to think of his name now. It just eluded me there, but, okay, David Geffen is who I was thinking of.
I've never met David in all these years. I've met many TV people. I have not met David, but I'm sure he's got that same quality. I mean, look, I have a chapter in my book about the most relentless people, the most relentless tribe in the world, the Jews. David Geffen is Jewish. I happen to be Jewish. Donald Trump is not Jewish, but he sure acts Jewish. Jewish New York is just, there's something about Jewish New Yorkers. They are hammers, and they just hammer down the door until they get what they want. And it's a trait that really should be copied by people all over the world, and it can be. How do I know that? Because in China, of the 10 best-selling books a couple of years ago, 10 best-selling business books in all of China, 5 of them were about how to be like a Jew. In America, they don't allow things like that. That's politically incorrect to say something like that. But the Chinese people are fast passing us like we're standing still in quicksand. America is going to be left behind in the next few years. And while America spends their whole life worrying about political correctness and diversity, the Chinese people are saying, wait a minute, let's look at all the most successful people in the world. They're all Jewish. Let's study them, copy them, and become just like them. And they're doing it. And they're becoming the most successful country in the world. And pound for pound, the most successful country in the world, the tiniest but most successful country in the world is Israel. Far more successful than America or China, except it's tiny. But pound for pound, population size-wise, Israel is the most successful nation on the face of the earth. And it's filled with relentless Jews. And the Chinese are copying them. And that's why they're passing us. And we should stop worrying about political correctness and admit the truth. Some groups are better at some things, and Jews are very smart people, very relentless and very good at business and very good at promotion. And I happen to be Jewish, so I could say those things without anyone getting mad at me. And it can all be copied. You're not born with that. Someone has to teach it to you. And so, in China, that's why all the best-selling books are about how to think like a Jew, how to act like a Jew, how to be wealthy like a Jew. In America, we don't talk like that, but I think we should. It's time to start studying successful groups and emulating them. And I give you a head start in this new book, The Power of Relentless.
Well, one thing that's interesting, too, when you consider about the American psyche is that we tend to also have a sense of entitlement here in this country. And what I mean by that is we tend to believe that if we think about an idea or if we act on an idea that we have, that just because we put in some effort, that we should see success. And when that doesn't happen, when people begin to discover, look, business, life, all those sort of things, they're not a linear path. There are times you got to make adjustments when you're pursuing your goal. I remember when we started this show about a dozen years ago, we actually had a guest that came onto the program. He didn't think I was much of a radio personality or an interviewer for that matter, and actually said to the producer, he says, look, 99% of the radio shows that go on out there usually fail. And she wondered how I felt about that, and I said, well, how about this? Why don't we be that 1% that he's not talking about? That's exactly what we've been doing. My attitude is you keep doing something until, as you've been saying, you get it done. And as far as I'm concerned, we don't fail in doing what we do until we decide we don't want to do it anymore, and that's probably because maybe there's something else I'd rather pursue.
Right.
But most people don't think that way. And what I appreciate what you said in the beginning of the program is you'll discover these people that we idolize, that we deem to be the kind of success we would like to have, is simply this, and this is so true because I was at a Monopoly event. When you're around these people, you realize, you know what? These people aren't any smarter than I am, and if that's true and I know this, then my chances are just as good as theirs are. It's just a matter of getting in there, rolling up the sleeves, and doing what needs to be done.
Well, it's a matter of a lot of things. I mean, I think if you analyze like a Donald Trump, okay, energy is a very important key. And so in my book, I give you, it's easy to say hammer away and be relentless. It's much harder to actually do it when you're getting hammered every day by life and fate and bad luck and whatever words you want to use for what happens in life. Everybody gets pounded, And so you've got to respond to that stress in a positive way. So my book is dedicated to positive addictions, showing you how, the average person gets, denigrated by life, knocked back down or blocked by life, sent backwards by life, and they respond by doing drugs. I can't take it anymore. They become a drug addict. They smoke cigarettes. They drink alcohol. They get drunk. They act out. They do stupid things. They eat junky food. They stop at McDonald's. And my positive addictions are all positive habits that will help you be successful in response to bad things happening. And I list them in my book. They're what I do every day. It's my daily program that anybody could do. It's a very disciplined program, a very positive program. It'll give you the confidence you've never had in your life and the energy you've never had in your life. And I think that's what's missing in most success books. They tell you how to be successful. They tell you what to do, but they don't tell you how to stay focused, how to stay disciplined, how to stay with it in the face of the withering attacks of life. And I do that in the Power of Relentless. I equip you with tools that allow you to fight back. And those tools are prayer and faith in God and meditation and Bible reading and affirmation and visualization and yoga and goal planning and vitamin supplementation. I give you the right vitamins to create perfect health and high energy after a lifetime of testing. I give you all the clues, healthy eating, exercise, all of them are in my new book, The Power of Relentless. And I think that's the difference that will allow you to stay true to your goals.
Now, a lot of times, too, when you look at a lot of these success books, one of the things they may talk about is that about taking risks, and sometimes I think people get the impression when they hear that is that, okay, you're talking about me doing something that I'm not used to doing, and I'm kind of afraid to do that, and I may fail, and then there's all these things that go on in their mind about why they shouldn't take that step. But in fact, you need to move in that direction, and you need to experience that potential failure you believe you're going to have, because it shows you what you need to strengthen. And I know that's one of the things that you talk about in your book.
Well, it's really the area when people ask me, why are Jews successful, especially the Jews of Israel? Well, I could tell you from my background that my family was a family that did not take risks. My dad was not a risk taker, and he spent his entire life in a little butcher store making no money. And on his deathbed, he literally was scared to death for me that I would, run out of money because I was such a wild, risk-taking riverboat gambler, as they say, and a gunslinger. And he died with nothing. And I've been this wild risk-taker my whole life. And yes, I've failed a few times, but I've also succeeded a bunch of times. And those successes have bought me, the kind of mansion that most people dream of in Las Vegas, Nevada. I had a Federal Express guy deliver a package the other day, and he just stood there at the door, like with his mouth open, and said, "What is it like?" I said, "What do you mean? What is it like to be rich and live in a house like this?" That's the kind of reaction, people have when they have average jobs and you live in a mansion, but they don't know what it took to get there. Tremendous sacrifice, tremendous risk, being willing to put it all on the line again and again and again. Everything you've got should be on the line. Otherwise, you can never be super successful. You got to put it all on the line. And so I find that, gambling is a very necessary part of life. The average person doesn't understand that. As a matter of fact, you go to church and you learn the exact opposite. You learn that gambling is a sin. Well, I don't know. Gambling at a craps table is a sin, but I don't think that, that might be a sin. But I don't know that gambling $1 million in the stock market is a sin, because a lot of people have made $1 billion on Wall Street, and they would argue with you that gambling is a good thing. I know that I've gambled with every house I've ever bought. I know that I've gambled with every business I've ever started. Taking your $1 million in your mattress, taking it out, and gambling it on a business that you could lose it in a week, That's really gambling. That's much more than gambling in a craps table or making a bet on a football game. And yet people lump gambling in as bad with everything else. Well, no, it's not. You have to take a chance. Without risk, there is no reward. And so in my book, I talk about the most successful group in history is the Jews, and the reason why is because once you've been persecuted, once you've been hunted, once you've been wiped out in the Holocaust, once you've been persecuted everywhere you've ever been, every country you've ever been, everybody hates you, everybody wants to murder you, it doesn't quite seem like such a big risk to put $100,000 in a business anymore. It makes it seem kind of tame in comparison to losing everything you've got and running in the middle of the night with all your belongings in the back of a donkey cart, to another town where maybe they'll accept a Jew for a few years. And I think it's in the blood of Jews that, because they've been persecuted so often, taking a risk in business is just not a big deal. You have no choice. It's the only way to be successful is to believe in yourself, because no one else will ever make you successful. They won't even hire you for a job, so you have to create your own career. And I think that's what made them so incredibly, incredibly successful. And so risk is absolutely a necessary part of life. When a new business opportunity comes up, you better take advantage of it, because people who aren't risk takers just spend their lives in a safe job getting a safe paycheck, and nobody ever pays you what you're worth. No company will ever pay you what you're worth when you work for other people, ever, because that's the whole point of capitalism. You start a business, you take a lot of risk, you want the money to all be yours, and it should be. Your employees aren't supposed to get rich, you are. And so, I think society has it all backwards now, Daniel. Everything under Barack Obama is backwards. Everything. He doesn't understand the way business works. People don't start a business and risk their life savings so that they could pay $15 an hour minimum wage to people who are doing nothing, who don't even have a high school degree, who are just starting out in the world that don't know anything, didn't risk anything, and they have nothing on the line. You don't have to pay them $15 an hour. And if you do pay them $15 an hour, then you're going to have to raise the prices for every other employee that works for you. The people that used to make $15 now want to make $25. The people that made $25 an hour now want to make $50, and the people that made $50 want to make $100. Now you're going to have to either go out of business or you're going to have to raise the prices of all your customers. This is the destruction of America and the destruction of capitalism. This idea in Obama's head, which is socialism and communism, that everybody's supposed to be equal and everyone's supposed to be taken care of, whether they deserve it or not, whether they are worth it or not, whether they've gone to the right school and classes, whether they've graduated with an A or a D, everybody's the same. No, they're not. Some people are A students, and some people are F students. And the A students get more money than the F students. That's the way life works. It's based on performance. And Barack Obama has no understanding of that. And unfortunately, there's a lot of people who are F students, and they're voting for him. And it's causing the entire country to become dysfunctional and the entire economy to be badly, badly damaged. And I don't even know if it can ever recover from what we've just been through for the last 7.5 years.
Well, we can only hope so when people begin to wake up again, as I talked about, the idea of self-entitlement, because I'm in America, I deserve these things, and, obviously, well, you can live, in that direction if you choose to, but what we're talking about here is something that takes a person to a level where they serve others well because of their capacity to be able to do so.
Right. Well, look, I always use my daughter as the example. I told you she was homeschooled, and she went to Harvard, graduated magna cum laude, now getting her economics degree in Germany, master's degree in Germany, free ride. They gave her a full scholarship. And I said to my daughter one day, I said, all your Harvard classmates are all liberals, big liberals, and they believe in equality and social justice and fairness. Why don't we tell all of them that from now on, no matter what they do, they all get a C? Doesn't matter what they do. Doesn't matter how hard you work. Doesn't matter how hard you party and don't work. Everyone gets the same C. Now, you're Mrs. Big Shot, straight A+, magna cum laude at Harvard. Is there any reason to study anymore? No, Dad, there's no reason to study. Why would I study if I get a C no matter what I do? And how about the people who screw up all the time? They're out partying, having sex, doing drugs, and never studying. They're going to get a C also, no matter what they do. So is there any reason to give up the partying? No, Dad. Might as well just party all day long. Right. So how would you feel at that point? Well, I'd never study again. I'd never pick up a book again. Exactly. And that's what's happened to our entire economy for the last 8 years. There it is. There's no reason to work if everything you do gets taken away from you. And if you risk your money and build a business and they take 90% of what you make, why bother to do it? Why bother to create jobs and take risks? And all the people at the bottom who don't want to take risks and who want to accept a check from government, why bother to work harder when There's no reason to. They're going to keep giving you more checks. They're going to keep the checks coming, and they're going to make them higher and higher each year to ensure that you vote for them, the people who are giving out the checks. It makes no sense. The entire system is failing, it's dysfunctional, and it's bringing down the country.
Now, one of the biggest things when people begin to embark on, as you talk about in your book, about you want to always aim higher than the average person. In fact, you were just talking about that. And the idea that we know that adversity does come along, and sometimes you're like, well, I didn't think that was supposed to happen. How does this relate to the direction I'm going here? But what you need to do is kind of look at these situations. I remember a guest I had on the program, when something bad happens, he simply says, well, I wonder what good is going to come from this. And then he just waits to see what happens, and he says, life begins taking you on this interesting, magical journey, and you end up landing in places you wouldn't have expected, even though you may have goals in mind, and eventually you find yourself achieving those things. And I think to myself, it's interesting because we tend to look at adversity as something that we need to fight or run away from, and here he's saying, well, if you go with this approach here, you get to open up to the magic of that moment to see what there is to be gained from it.
Well, first of all, I do want to point out it's not quite that simple. I mean, you have to have talent in the first place, and some people just don't have talent. I mean, not everyone in society is meant to make millions of dollars a year, but the people who are meant to be are almost always risk takers. That's what it comes down to. You have to own your own business to make millions of dollars a year. You can never work for someone else to make millions. So there is such a thing as a pipe dream, always seeing the most positive in everything, but it's never going to happen. That's called a pipe dream. And so as an example, if you work at McDonald's or you're a janitor at a store, you're never going to be rich, no matter how good a janitor you are, no matter how good an employee you are at McDonald's. On the other hand, if you are going to night school while you're at McDonald's or while you're a janitor, and you graduate number one in your class, and that gets you a scholarship to a college, and that college gets you to an MBA, and you graduate number one in your class at that MBA, during that entire trip, you have to maintain positive thinking. That's the right way to do it. In other words, education and hard work and discipline and sacrifice all adds up to success. And then when you get to the graduation day, someone hires you. Well, if you spend the rest of your life accepting just working for someone else, you probably won't go very far again. But if you go to work knowing I'm going to be here for 3 to 5 years, I'm going to be a sponge, I'm going to learn everything I can, and I'm going to leave and do my own business, that's when you probably become a millionaire. But guess what? The process I just mentioned takes a lot of hard work, not just positive thinking. It takes 2 years to get your GED at night school. It takes another 4 years to graduate college, and if you're doing it a little at a time, maybe it's 8 years to graduate college. It takes then 3 years to get your MBA, or 2 years for MBA, 3 years for law school. Might take 10 years for medical school. And so, lots of years involved in this. Then I'm telling you, once you get out, 3 to 5 years, learning everything at a company as an apprentice and then getting out and doing your own thing. So, that's why a lot of people are 50 years old and making $1 million a year, and they're pretty angry at Obama and the society we've got now. Because if you're one of those people, it took you 30 years to achieve overnight success, and you're finally doing well, and all you hear from the commander-in-chief is, you're a bad person because you make too much money and you need to give it all back. So the government needs to steal it from you and redistribute it. So the people who didn't do anything you did, they didn't go to night school, they did do drugs, they committed crimes, they never worked hard, and they never had a good attitude, and they would never be patient enough to wait 30 years to be successful. That's why there's a lot of angry people in this country right now. A lot of angry people who are mad at the way things have been run by President Obama and now Hillary Clinton. Her ideas are just like his. Bernie Sanders, even worse. A lot of people backing Donald Trump because they're sick of the people who don't work hard thinking they deserve to have it all handed to them.
Couldn't agree with you more. I'll tell you, like I said, in the last dozen years, we've had our ups and downs, but it's really been a thrill to do what we do. When I tell people, why you wouldn't start your own, even your small business as you work for somebody else because of the tremendous tax benefits that you actually get out of it. But besides that, we got about a minute left. If you could, for our guests, give out a website where they can find out about the book and that sort of thing.
Sure. Well, first of all, the book is easy. I mean, the way the world works now is you just need to know Amazon.com, right? Every book is available on Amazon. So it's The Power of Relentless. You can get it at Amazon or any fine bookstore. Go to Barnes & Noble and ask them for it. Go to Costco or go to Walmart and ask them for it. Sam's Club. But Amazon's the easiest place. It's where we sell 90% of our books nowadays. And then my websites that are of interest to you would be, for everything I do in the business world, would be WayneRoot.com, because I am Wayne Root. So that's pretty simple, right? WayneRoot.com. If you want to bring me in to give a speech to your corporation, it's RelentlessRoot.com. That's my speaking site, RelentlessRoot.com, patterned after my book, The Power of Relentless. And then my political website is RootForAmerica.com, ROOT for America.com, where you get all my political views on videotape, because people like to watch. They don't like to read anymore. So I put them all on video, and all the videos are at RootForAmerica.com.
Well, very good. Well, with the last 30 seconds here, who do you think? You think Donald's going to take it this year?
I think he is, but I mean, the reason I like him is the whole world's against him, and of course, when the whole world's against you, it's kind of hard to win. So, I mean, the whole world is against him. Everyone is aligned and arrayed against Donald Trump. It's a tough road to hoe, but I think he's going to do it because he is absolutely relentless.
Very good. Wayne, thank you for joining us here on the Beyond 50 radio program today.
Thanks, Daniel. God bless. Root for America.
Always. I'm Daniel Davis. I want to thank you for tuning in. You can also discover more by visiting us at Beyond50Radio.com. That is the number 50. We encourage you to subscribe to our weekly e-news updates as well. You can also follow us on Twitter at Beyond50Radio as well as Facebook. Thanks again for tuning in. I'm Daniel Davis, and remember, live your day past halfway.